stacking multiple preamps and processors for the ultimate tone. It's Preamp Palooza, Metal Bass Monday. So if you're new to the channel, this is what we do. Techniques, chops, processors, amps, anything pertaining to metal bass all the way around, and interviews. So I've had a couple up recently, and I'm keeping that streak going, because this week we're going to have Mike LePond from Symphony X and Silent Assassins and Ross the Boss coming in to hang out, and he gave some great info, and it was a fun interview. So make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, make sure you have notifications on so you make sure you catch that when it comes up, and that's coming up this week. Also this week is my Ultimate P&J EMG set review and demo. That's come out in Guitar Interactive magazine, link below. Also in the same issue is my comparison between the Tech 21 RBI and the Bass Driver version 2. Now both of those demos in a slightly edited format will be coming up on the channel, so you can check it out here, but there will be a little bit more extensive information there and a written article inside Guitar Interactive issue 80. Again, link down below if you want to check that out. Also with the Mike LePond interview, as with all of them, the patrons get their own section where they get to submit a question and he answers it, and he had a great answer too. Just like Sarzo and Alefson and the guys who came in before. So if you'd like some of that additional content and some other things that pop up for the patrons and some live stream things, patron and Subscribestar links down below. Love to see you over there. Good stuff coming up too. So pretty much the floodgates have opened up finally on the gear demo stuff, and a lot of things are going to be coming out. So coming up next are going to be the Source Audio Multiwave for bass. That's going to be in the magazine and here on the channel, and you'll get a little sample today. And I'm also going to be doing some guitar stuff with the 4-channel AMT Stonehead SH4. Really impressive unit, so that'll be an interesting demo here too. So that's the news for this week. Let's get into preamp crushing. Step 1. Now there's 3 main things before we even get started with the units that most people miss and they skip over, and as Yoda would say, it is why you fail. What I notice a lot of people do is they just grab a few units and they try and run them together and just come up with sounds. And this creates a number of problems. The first and main one being, you want to have an endpoint. You want to have something that you're shooting for, and that's going to guide you through this process. The second problem is they try and get, as they go along, every unit to sound good by itself. That's not what you're after. You need the sum of the parts to sound good. Just because 2 sounds sound good separately doesn't mean they sound good when you combine them. It's the old peanut butter chocolate thing. So what you really need to do is, as we'll see in the process, and I'll guide you through it, use each unit for a specific reason to combine and create a sound that you hear in your head and that you know you're after. Use the units to get specific pieces of that tone, not just keep trying to recreate the tone in 4 units and then slam them all together. The last thing is that for most people, preamp stacking means a single linear chain. What do I mean by that? That means they plug into the first unit, into the second unit, into the third, into the fourth, so it's just this cascading thing. It's not always what you want. You sometimes want to split the signal so that you can use 2 different preamps and then combine them later so that they process separately, not one going into the other. Now, I'm going to add in number 4 because this is crucial, and guys really forget this one, is when they're dealing especially with pedals and processors, they will put all their sound together and they do it separately or through a DAW or whatever, and they don't start with their cabinet. You have to be listening through your cabinet at all times because your speakers have a massive effect on how your sound is carved at the end. So even as you start the beginning of the process, be hearing everything through your speakers so you adjust your tone to the speaker, not later go, well, I have this great sound and now I'm going to plug it into this cabinet and it's going to utterly change and now I'm going to be upset. So let's start with a mission statement. What I kind of look at as far as my tone and what I try and build is basically I'm trying to emulate 3 different bass players with 1 sound. Yeah, I know, because I'm realistic and not psycho at all. So what I'm going to be doing with this one is I have what I consider my central sound, which is a very gurgly, grindy kind of Spector-ish sound, big surprise. Something like older Eddie Jackson, Mike Starr, Mike Inez, that type of thing. So that's kind of the center of the sound. But then I want some other elements on it. On top, I want to hear some metallic grind, a bit more clang on top of it, that type of thing, something you might hear from like Dee Dee Verney. So I want that laid in over top of it. Then I want the big sub-lows, the huge room-filling bass, and some of that really nasty distortion that's guitar-like that you would hear from like Doug Pinnick. So I want that massive Pinnick undertone, the center being that gurgle of the Spector type of thing, and then some of that metallic grind that's really bright and sharp up on top. I know, because I'm realistic. But that's what we're after, so I'm going to carve a sound like that out of these units, and I'm going to show you a step at a time. So let's get to it. So what we have here is a preamp that's loaded into a pedal that's basically a copy of the Specor Hazlab NS2, but we've got some mods to it. There's a switch on it that alters how the low end is dialed in, and it's also got a mid knob, which the Hazlab doesn't. So I don't really use that too much, but that is what makes it a little different. But fundamentally, you've got a Hazlab with a couple other options. Now, next to that, I'm using the Source Audio Multiwave. And what I'm using this for is for compression, and I'm using one of their two-stage compressions, and also for a boost to hit the other preamps a little harder and give them a bit more juice and grit right from the word go. Now, third up is the SansAmp Bass Driver version 2. So I've got this one, and this is going to be what I consider kind of the meat of the sound, and you'll hear it as you go. This is where I'm going to get my Eddie Jackson, Spector-y, grindy type of sound. And then, of course, I've got the Doug Pinnick pedal. This is where my really metallic grind and my sub-lows and things like that are going to come out of. So let's start with just the sound of the bass by itself and build it up one piece at a time and see what we can get. So this is the sound of the bass going direct straight through the speaker cabinet. I've got a simulation of my Mesa 412 cab loaded into the DAW. So let's hear how it sounds, just the bass. Okay, so there's our raw bass. So step one is, and the way I look at it is, I want to mold the sound of my bass before it hits the preamps so that the right kind of signal is pre-shaped going in. If I feel there's any deficiencies or frequencies I'd rather kind of etch out or have it really kind of thickened up, I want that to happen before I hit the preamp. So what I'm going to do is head on over to this Spector, or the Hazlab one, and see if I can do it without even looking. And let's hear what we get when we load that in. So I'm getting a bit more definition out of it now, and there's a little bit of very mild, kind of the harmonics are jumping a little bit thicker. Off. So it gives it just a tiny bit, almost a bit of a drive, a little bit of presence, not going for something too massive. So next in the chain will actually be the compressor, but I'm going to jump over that first, and there's a reason for this. What I want to do is get the bass driver to get its best possible version of the sound I want, and then I'm going to do the compression into it. So it's like I'll do the best I can getting my sound out of it. Then when I hit it with the compressor and the boost, it's plus some. So instead of relying on both units to get just what I want, I'm going to get the best I can and then exceed it. So get a little extra on top. So let's turn on the bass driver and start working with that one. So you can hear what I've done is I've got a lot of grunt in it. There's a lot of definition. Some of the extended highs are rolled off, but there's now some drive in the signal, and it's got a real strong thump to it. That's what I really want out of this unit, is some grind. So that would be a good tone to me right up front. I'd be, more than happy playing with that type of sound, and it's got a lot of just most of what you want. Meat, some definition, and some good presence. But now, let's go ahead and turn that compressor boost on and see what it does to that unit. Now we're talking. Now I've gotten the extended lows are being pulled up a bit, and that fret noise and the real grind and clank are being brought into the sound. So let's do another A-B with that. Off. On. Really tightens up the bottom end with it still being massive and getting starting to hear that clank coming through. So I've added to the grind, the presence, and the definition, and really boosted going into the unit. So we've got a real snarly tone coming. So there's still a little icing to put on the cake. What we're going to add in now is the Doug Pinnock. Now the way I've got this one dialed in is I'm really using it somewhat differently, in that I'm trying to use it more as a secondary distortion unit, less than a preamp in itself. I'm using it to fill and decorate the sound that's already on there. So I've got the drive and the chunk, which is the amount of high-end distorted type of sound, really dialed in. I've got the mids pushed, and everything else is rolled back a little bit, but it is compressed heavy too. So let's bring that in and see what we get all together. And that is what's called metal bass. So let's A-B that and hear what that's doing to the signal as I bring it in. The important thing to remember here is that I'm not running the bass driver into the Doug. They're running simultaneously. I've got the compressor running out left and right, one going to the Sans amp, one going to the Doug. You can achieve this another way because the bass driver has a parallel out that's unprocessed. So I could just as easily send the compressed signal into the bass driver and then also out of the parallel out into the Doug. Depends on how you'd like to route. So there's that. But let's turn the Doug off. See what we get. Back on. So here I'm getting a little bit of that ting, 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 that kind of metallic brightness on top. So that makes sure I'm going to cut through guitars. I'm going to have some clang and some real bite to my sound. But good Lord, that bottom end. Oh, so good. So just to make the point again, now we're going to retrace the steps, and I want you to hear how each of these units sounds on their own, and they kind of sound like ass. Especially now that we've got this huge tone, when you hear how none of them really sound spectacular on their own, you'll really kind of understand that these are being used in conjunction, not trying to get a fantastic signal out of each. So let's shut off the bass driver. This is just the Doug with the Hazlab style pre and the compressor. I mean, it's not a bad tone. For me, it's a little light because I've dialed out a lot of the lows, because combining the lows of the two units would just turn to complete mud. So I'm letting the bass driver 2 carry the grunt part of it, and I'm betting in just a hint of those sub lows. Just that kind of on the bottom thing to carry through for just a little extra. But mostly what I want out of the Doug is the thing it does the best, which is that really guitar head style clangy distortion. So that's going to be my top end. As you can see, like I said, I've got the mids pushed a bit, and the lows are rolled back just a little bit, but the compressor's up, and the chunk, which if you don't have the unit, is how much of that top end grind and distortion is being brought in, and the amount of distortion is brought up a lot. So again, not a bad tone, but I probably wouldn't use this on my own. Although, I don't know, maybe I would. It does sound okay, but it's nowhere near what we had originally. So let's turn the other unit back on and see what we have combined. We go from to just not as massive. So now let's take the compressor out and listen to everything and see how it sounds without that boost in it. Okay. Compressor back. Hear how it makes everything much more discernible, angry, meat. All that low end and grind is brought in at the same time those sub-lows are lifted up, so you get just massive. That's what we're really after. Now let's do the last adjustment and hear what it sounds like if we drop out the initial preamp. Even that makes a difference. Back in. So you see how the small tweak I did using the initial preamp makes such a massive difference at the end. Again, check that out. Here's with it in. With that out. So shaping your sound before it hits any processing, just as crucial as the processing after. So now let's go all the way back, just going through the speaker. This is just going through as if I was going straight DI into a power amp going into the Mesa 412. It would sound like this. Then we have preamps. So I think that pretty well covers it, but let me know down in the comments and let's talk about this. Have you done these type of chains, and do you have a couple of preamps you think might work together? I'd love to see, like, if you guys do some stuff where you link your own preamps together or try out some experiments like this, definitely link to a video or something. I'm such a nerd and I love seeing this stuff, so absolutely into it. So I hope this gives you some insight into it and some things to think about. If you have questions about the routing or anything I did on here, feel free to ask. But I'd really be curious to see if you've run chains like this and if you've had different experiences on how you EQ or where you place EQs or things like that. That'd be really cool. So I'm also going to be doing a little something extra for patrons on this, along with the EMG stuff. I'm going to do a live stream on the recent demos and things and let you guys just hit me up with some questions. So if you would like to be a patron, again, the links are down below, and thanks as always to all my patrons. You guys are awesome, and you've really helped out with me being able to push up the amount of content that's been coming out. And yes, I mean, there's probably about 8 or 9 videos coming over the next 2 weeks, so including this week. So definitely check out that review. And finally, to end out, I had so much fun doing this, and I wish somebody would have been here to see it. This week, a friend of mine and channel patron, DV Karloff, unfortunately passed, and I'll miss the dude a lot. He was very cool, and I was looking forward to seeing him again, and he hung out and chatted with everybody in the comments, and he was big on nerding out, and I feel like he would have enjoyed this one. So sorry he couldn't be here for it, but DV buddy, if you're still watching this one, it's for you. So with that, thanks as always for being here. Don't take anything for granted. Have fun. Play bass like you mean it. And I will see you on the next one.